This is what happened in Jincheon on January 30th, 10 days after the first confirmed case of COVID-19 in South Korea. Local residents of Asan and Jincheon, where the South Korean government planned to quarantine evacuees from Wuhan, the epicenter of the new coronavirus outbreak in China, held protest rallies and blocked roads with tractors, voicing concerns about their own safety. The situation was tense, as South Koreans were getting very nervous about the news of first confirmed cases of COVID-19. Many people, including the main opposition party, were blaming the government for not sealing off the border with China. However, a dramatic turn of events occurred the next day. Residents of Asan and Jincheon announced they would no longer oppose the government decision and only ask for thorough quarantine measures. Soon, the protest banners were replaced by welcome banners, road blocking tractors by well-wishing SNS messages. When we face danger, most of us react with a me-first attitude, out of fear and survival instincts. My own safety first, before helping others. Well, there's nothing wrong with this. It's only natural. However, we also have empathy and capacity to reason. Because of empathy, we commiserate with the plight of others and want to help them. Because of reason, we realize that our own safety depends on the safety of the whole community and act in socially responsible ways. Drawing on empathy and relying on reason, we may overcome selfishness and develop solidarity. It's easy, however, to succumb to fear and become slaves of our survival instincts, especially when we panic. Then an innocuous me-first attitude can easily morph into a baleful, me-only attitude. Residents of Jincheon and Asan and the people of South Korea more broadly were tending toward this ominous path. Somehow, between January 30th and 31st, something happened so that they were able to resist this evil temptation and retrieve the better angel of our nature. So, what changed? I'll come back to this at the end of my talk. The spirit of solidarity has largely prevailed in South Korean responses to COVID-19. After the infamous Synergies Act-related outbreak in February, turned the city of Daegu into the second major epidemic after Wuhan, there were calls for closing of the city. Lots of people were blaming people in Daegu. As the virus raged and the patients overwhelmed the local hospitals, Korean people once again put solidarity ahead of fear and selfishness. A lot of medical professionals and other volunteers ventured to lend a helping hand at the front line of the pandemic. Lots of personal protective equipment and other goods poured into the city, even ambulances like these. And hospitals in faraway regions accepted virus-stricken patients from Daegu. The explosive outbreak in Daegu was tamed within a month without a lockdown, and the spread of COVID-19 outside the city remained under control without ever sealing off the city. One more example of solidarity prevailing concerns the policy toward undocumented immigrants, which I recommended to the government as a member of the Pandemic Response Advisory Committee. Prime Minister Chung Se-kyun laid out this policy in late April as follows, and I quote, "Please strengthen quarantine efforts in areas that have high concentrations of foreigners and make sure they receive face masks and other treatments at public health facilities without worrying about their immigration status." I believe this triumph of solidarity over the me-only attitude has been central to the South Korean success in dealing with COVID-19 and should be a key element in the global response to the pandemic. So this leads all of us here today to an important question. Why is solidarity an essential element of an effective COVID-19 response? The primary goal of a pandemic response is flattening the curve. We have all heard so much about this concept, and we all know what it is, right? Yes? No? Flattening the curve means inhibiting new infections to keep the number of cases, confirmed cases at any moment, below the level the healthcare system can handle. Now, to flatten the curve, we can employ 3 lines of defense against the spread of the virus, just like a typical formation in football. The first line, defense, voluntary actions on an individual level. Second, the social imposition of these individual level defenses. And thirdly, a testing and tracing strategy. So, what can individuals do? What should individuals do? We all know this, 3 W's. Wash your hands, wear a mask, watch your distance. That is, don't get infected and don't infect others by practicing personal hygiene and watching the physical distancing. This is a relatively low-cost response with large benefits. But some people behave carelessly, often because they think the risk of infection is low. And therefore, the benefit of reducing the probability of infection is not worth the bother. But this is a selfish calculation, not taking into the effect of their behavior in terms of infecting others. This is what's called the externality problem in economic theory. Self-regarding individuals ignore the effects of their behavior on others to the detriment of social welfare. Solidarity is a cure for this problem. It leads people to internalize the externalities and behave responsibly, not only to protect themselves, but to protect others. Another important reason for people failing to observe the 3 W's is poverty and other economic imperatives, including the so-called essential workers. Obviously, we need solidarity to help these people protect themselves and others. The second line of defense is socially imposing the individual level defenses. This can be highly effective, but mandating mask wearing is controversial, as we're seeing in the United States and elsewhere. And socially imposing physical distancing, that is social distancing, such as border closures and lockdowns, can be extremely costly, often unbearably so for poor people. Unless we help them, they may undermine social distancing regimes. Again, solidarity is crucial. The third line of defense is testing and tracing strategy. Here, an essential ingredient of success is people's cooperation in terms of getting tested when they develop suspected symptoms and telling the truth about their contacts when they test positive. Hiding and lying are the worst enemy of this strategy. This is why we need a solidarity-based approach regarding the undocumented immigrants and other marginalized groups. They may be easily tempted to hide and lie unless they feel safe. To appreciate the importance of solidarity in a pandemic response, let us imagine now, what would have happened had the residents of Asan and Jincheon continued their resistance to housing the evacuees, and the political conflicts surrounding this issue had deepened. A toxic politicization of the pandemic response policy and a milieu of blaming the victims would have followed. Flattening the curve in Daegu would have been much more difficult and drawn out. The much acclaimed strategy of testing and tracing would have been much less effective because of hiding and lying by those who feel insecure for whatever reasons. In fact, the me-only attitude and the lack of solidarity have hindered the pandemic responses around the world. An obvious example is reckless parties like these that breed community infections. Also, it is no secret that marginalized and poor people around the world bear the brunt of the pandemic, often thwarting the quarantine efforts and thereby exacerbating the pandemic. Somali refugees in Sweden, Venezuelan refugees in Colombia, migrant workers, Singapore, India. The list goes on and on. A particularly poignant example of how the lack of solidarity exacerbates the pandemic comes from the detention and deportation policy of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, of the US government. An investigation by the New York Times and the Marshall Project revealed how the ICE agency turned into a worldwide spreader of the virus with unsafe conditions and scattershot testing in its detention centers and forced deportation of the virus-infected patients to their countries of origin. Okay, we have looked at why solidarity is important in flattening the curve. But this is not the end of the story. To put a complete end to the pandemic, we need research and development to find effective cures and vaccines. Scientific knowledge is what we call a public good in economic theory. And as such, the best strategy to make progress on this front is the most public approach imaginable. That is, global cooperation, with all the experts around the world pitching in and sharing knowledge and information. Sounds too idealistic? In fact, this is how we have been producing the flu vaccine over the past 50 years, and how the global scientific community has been responding to COVID-19 so far, following the laudable tradition of open science. We must keep watch, however, lest the me-only attitude destroys the solidarity of the scientific community. Commercial pharmaceutical companies have been profiting from privatizing and locking up knowledge commons. And some politicians have been taking a my nation first, or even my nation only approach to developing and distributing the potential vaccines and pharmaceutical treatments. The virus pays no attention to political borders. COVID-19 reminds us that we're all connected, no matter where we live, what we believe, what we have, or what we look like. It's self-evident that a global pandemic calls for global cooperation. Yet today, global cooperation is conspicuous by its absence. In fact, intergovernmental conflicts over the pandemic response have done enormous harm, causing unnecessary losses and preventable deaths. The lack of leadership and solidarity is an even greater threat than the virus itself. So, my talk so far can be summed up as follows. Solidarity is an essential part of an effective pandemic response, but there is not enough of it. There is not enough solidarity. So what can you do? What should we do? This brings me back to the story of Jincheon and Asan. What happened between January 30th and 31st? What happened to turn the situation around? Why did the me-only attitude stop spreading and yield to the feelings of solidarity? Well, yes, there were assurances and persuasions by the government officials, for sure. But they were probably not decisive, given that the residents were so angry about the unilateral decision by the government. On the other hand, the tide was turning on social networking sites, where more and more people came to coalesce around the opinion that criticizing the government was one thing, and rejecting the evacuees was another. The evacuees didn't do anything wrong. and they are suffering. If we send them away, what will happen to them? We must help them, said the voice of reason and empathy within us. More and more people began to think this way. In this process, an initiative known as the We Are Asan campaign seemed to have played an important role. A resident of Asan, a certain posted the following Facebook message on the 30th. I'm starting a relay to show that many people in Asan actually welcome our brothers and sisters from Wuhan, who must have trembled with fear. Let us welcome them warmly. Soon, it was followed by a lot of messages and photos in support like these, not only in Asan, but Jincheon as well. On the night of January 30th, the situation was tense and fluid. It was possible that the me-only attitude would continue to strengthen and overpower solidarity. Luckily, for all of us, the public opinion turned around. We'll never know exactly how the turnaround came about. It's clear, however, that it would not have happened if no one did anything to change the tide. Perhaps the We Are Asan campaign produced a butterfly effect and proved decisive. Perhaps it was something else that was decisive. More likely, a lot of small actions by many individuals helped tip the balance in favor of solidarity. The moral of this story is simple. We must do what we can to help solidarity win its battle over the me-only attitude. No matter how small and insignificant it may seem, our actions may end up making a big difference. If more of us act, the better the odds for solidarity will be. So, look around. See if there are things that you can do to help the side of solidarity. I'm sure there are many things you can do. I challenge you to do one thing, one project of yours for solidarity's sake. This is the spirit of KDISchool, the host of this event. We are a small institution, but we have a big dream, a world in which everyone on earth cooperates to flatten the curve, to counter the pandemic, and to overcome other global problems, together in solidarity. Thank you.
I come from a land of rich culture, rich traditions. We pride ourselves in our royalty. People from my land will always call themselves Otikoko Swanana. That means the grandchild of the one who sits on the golden stool. That is the Ashanti Kingdom in Ghana. But this morning, I am not talking about my Ashanti Kingdom, and I'm not talking about my country, Ghana. I'm talking about my African story. When I was a child, my mom told me a story about great men that she grew up admiring. Her grandfather and his best friend. She said anytime she wakes up, she waited in anticipation for these two men to do their normal shouting. Pan-Africa, progressive. Pan-Africa, progressive. Meanwhile, she didn't even know what they meant. And it never made sense to her. She was barely 8 years old. And that was before the first coup d'etat that saw the overthrow of the first president of the Republic of Ghana, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who happened to be the Pan-Africanist icon. My mom's story prompted me to ask questions, to read about the Pan-African ideals without any clear strategies to get this Pan-African dream. So in my high school days, in university days, I kept asking my friends. Some really didn't care. Some knew less. Others thought it was a very big dream, whilst others also thought that maybe, just maybe, gradually we might get there, but it will not be now. But it was through one of these conversations with a Mochwanan brother, Ronald, here at KDI, and the special lecture I attended by Dr. Sangung An, I hope I got the name right, when he touched on the Singapore story, their success story, and that of Korea, that I was prompted to speak on economic integration of Africa before its political unification. The Pan-African ideals looks at the homogenizing of the whole African continent into one big country, one president, one government, one culture, one voice, maybe one language. And I have been wondering what language that we'll be speaking. Is it Swahili by the people in the south or Yoruba? Can you help me with some, the African students here? Exactly. So I don't know which one we are going to agree on. Or maybe because we may not be able to come on agreement, we might just consider to choose one of the colonizers' language, which in a way defeats our purpose of existence. Now, as someone who is passionate about learning cultures and open to new knowledge, where do I stand in all these? What do I think of all these? And most importantly, where does everything connect? And for me, it starts from the basic block, building it together, connecting it together to form something bigger. I have and will always be for the economic integration of Africa, first, before any homogenized Pan-African state. I will always be for the economic integration of Africa, but I know that is not going to come by easily. We see this glass. This is what Pan-Africa looks at. A broken glass, putting everything together. Do we think this is possible if we do not go through the gradual process? It is going to be difficult indeed. We have struggled to achieve this far. That is true. Why is this so? Because the very fiber of our being, our language, our culture, our diversity, and even our population, the individual populations of the countries, have been ignored. We believe in democracy, and we might go for an election to elect the president of the United States of Africa. But then we have not considered the population of the various states. So imagine the Botswana state that have less than 5 million people presenting a candidate that they think this is the best. And then Nigeria is like, we are 140 million. We can't wait for you to come, bring someone to come and rule us. Do we think this is going to work? You know, so whilst I was thinking about this, my African dream, I remembered a video of David Cameron, former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, I watched somewhere in 2014. And David Cameron addressing the EU in 2013 stressed on the fact that they should maintain their diversity, their language, their culture, or else the union they are looking for is not going to work. And the second president of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, he even popularized this the more, and he said, Africa's development, for Africa's development to go on, we have to focus on economic integration. So I have been asking myself, for the past 60 years, we started AU. For the past 60 years, we were on the quest of becoming United States of Africa. Why have we failed? Why have we failed to make any meaningful showing? Where has everything gone wrong? Well, there are some hardcore Pan-Africanists, and they think that Africa can only sit at the table with the big guys, like US, Japan, China, South Korea. If we go as one country, not as smaller countries with small population, because our GDP alone cannot even be compared to that of Beijing. Then I ask myself, what is the population of Norway? Just a little bit above 5 million. Yet, they have meaningful economic conversations with the United States. What about Saudi Arabia? What about Qatar? I know some of us will say they sit on the world's oil, so you cannot leave them out. But Africa has wealth of minerals. Don't we have cash crops? And most importantly, we have a large young population. That's, I think we are the envy of the world. So then where is the problem? Why is it that we've not been able to get there? We've seen the Asian tigers. In fact, I'm experiencing a stage right now in one of the Asian tigers. Did we ever hear of United States of Asia? I guess not. And I know most of us have given these a thought. For me, instead of looking at sitting at the big table with the big guys, I think we must first assess our current state of affairs. And most importantly, we must assess who we truly are. Africa has failed to connect with the fact that although we are different in background and in cultures, we are one in spirit. And it is in this oneness of spirit that we must begin to find the genuine differences and the commonalities that we share. It is in this oneness of spirit that we must begin to build our countries from. It is in this oneness of spirit that we must celebrate each other's diversity and fashion our development from there. We may get there one day. Before we ever get there in our lifetime, I think that we should focus on the economic integration before any political unification. I was reading a paper by Oliver Blackley in 2011, and he gave a vivid description of the European Union. I don't know why I'm so enthused about the European Union, but I think it is working. And therefore, if ever we want to have a solid union, if ever we want to make AU stronger on trade and economic issues, maybe we should take a cue from there, because they also started the same process somewhere in the 60s. It's over 60 years now that they started. Oliver Blackley described the European Union as one with a single market, one with a judicial system, and one with an intergovernmental, and I stress on the word intergovernmental organizations. And for 60 years, we have seen the fruition of what they started. Before we achieve one Africa, if we will ever get there, I ask again, we must first accept that we will never develop without paying attention to our diversity, because that is where everything connects. And if we would ever want to get that one Africa someday, which I know is going to be a very long time, we will wait for that long, we must focus on these 5 things: accommodating our cultures and fostering development along those lines. We must also focus on calibrating growth-enhancing policies. An open market is the way to go. You know, when I was coming to Korea, there were issues of Nigerian traders having problems trading in Ghana because the Ghanaian traders thought that the Nigerian traders are taking over the market. I, for one, was against what my Ghanaian brothers were doing. And we all know the relationship between Nigeria and Ghana. We are the closest in West Africa. Yet, when it came to trade, we could not accommodate them. And that is what we should focus on. an open market, where we can trade not just within West Africa, but go beyond West Africa to other parts of Africa without any problem. Then we'll begin to think of that one country, Africa. And the third one is, we must focus on promoting stability and peace across the region. There are pockets of violence, pockets of instability across the region. Sometimes we sit unconcerned. There is a balance in my country that says, "Jiufiasam." I believe Sam knows that phrase very well. Mind your home business. We are sitting down minding our home business, and we are still dreaming of a big Africa. I think it was just some 2 weeks ago that the president of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, led a team of presidents to Mali to mediate between them, the Mali government and the rebels in the north. I've been following that story, but I don't know how far it's gone. If we cannot promote peace, if we cannot stand for each other in these trying times, do we ever think that one African country will become a reality? The fourth thing is removing obstacles, especially cross-border restrictions. It will interest you to know that last year I wanted to travel to Tunisia for a conference, and there was no consulate of Tunisia in Ghana. Surprising, right? I had to travel all the way to Nigeria for the nearest consulate, just to travel to another African country. And yet, we think we can become one country just to sit at the table when we have all these restrictions on. Ghana to Tunisia. And I didn't even know which flight I was going to take, where I'm going to land and all the transit. Meanwhile, if you just look up the map, you see Tunisia just up there and Ghana down there. Yet all these restrictions. And finally, we have to focus on removing the bane of African governments. Corruption is our bane. We can't even fight it at the individual level. Do we think that whilst we refuse to fight corruption at the individual levels, we may ever be able to come together as one country? I don't know about you. An economically unified Africa will never become a reality if we keep aiming at United States of Africa and keep ignoring the very basic building blocks where everything connects. As African policy makers here at KDI, I know some of us are here. Let us begin to deepen the conversation on our diversity. Let us begin to push for more trade liberalization across the continent. It is time we make each other stronger through good governance before we think of a bigger body. And there is this South African word that interests me so much. Ubuntu. I am because you are. And I will personalize it and say, Africa will be if each country is. Thank you.
First of all, I want to say that it is a big honor for me to be a part of TED Talks. TED Talks is a huge thing. It's so huge that my mom, who doesn't know anything, knows about TED Talks. I called my mom and said, "Oma, I'm going to be part of TED Talks. I'm going to do a TED Talk speech." And she was like, "Oh, TED Talk very famous. But why are you speaking? You are not famous." I said, "Wow. I love you too, Mom. I love you too." But she's right. I'm not famous. And that's why I think I need to introduce myself so that you guys will be like, "Wow, who is this weird looking ajashi on stage," right? My name is Danny Cho, and I am a stand-up comic who has been doing stand-up comedy for 20 years, but specifically 3 years in Korea, in the Korean language. And so I want to talk about my journey. I started doing stand-up in the summer of 2000. It was the summer between high school and college. And my friends were like, hey, Danny, you're a funny dude, but can you do it on stage? And I was like, well, if you pick a spot, I'll do it. I was one of those hormonal kids, those dumb kids, but you dare me, I'll fucking do it. That was my dumb young hormonal guy mind. So my friends, they found an open mic night in what back in the days we used to call the hood. And so we went and they called my name. And when I walked on stage, barely any claps. It was. And then there was a woman in the back that was like, oh, he Chinese, you know he ain't funny. Mm-hmm. And so I prepared about a 5 to 10 minute set about, like farting or something dumb, right? So I threw all that away and I attacked her. I made fun of her appearance, her looks, her clothes. I said, ugh, you look like you're not even like National Geographic hot. You're just ugly altogether, right? And so the crowd was like, oh my God, this Chinese guy's going crazy. And the crowd went, they were crazy, right? And so to me, that feeling was very addicting, But what I want to say before I continue on is that was not stand-up comedy. According to Wikipedia, stand-up comedy is a comic act in which a comedian performs in front of a live audience, usually performing directly to them. Now, a comedian, it seems like they're doing dialoguing, but in actuality, they're monologuing with a group of jokes, stories, one-liners, and that's called a set, right? And so what I did in the hood, in that open mic, was not stand-up comedy. I was just verbally attacking, right? But the crowd went crazy. That feeling was so good that for 20 years, I've been searching and chasing that high, And so got into college, was performing in college, and then graduated, and I became a business consultant, right? I was a suit and tie guy, and I was a suit, as they call it, and but I was still doing stand-up. So I would get out of the office, and then I would go to the comedy club, tell jokes in my suit and tie, and then go back to the office, finish up the day, and go. And I did that for 3 years. And I was making good money as a consultant, and as a Korean American son, my mom was like, 우리 아들 컨설팅이에요. You know how Korean moms, they brag amongst their friends, but they don't brag like directly. They brag kind of in a roundabout way. Like my mom's way of bragging would be like she'll see her friend at church, and all of a sudden she'll start grabbing her head, and then her friends go, 다니 엄마 왜 그래? And then my mom goes, 머리가 아파서 어지러워. 왜 어지러워? 우리 아들이 너무 큰 TV를 사줘갖고. Right? They go in a roundabout way of bragging, right? Anyway, so I was a consultant and I wanted to quit, but I was afraid to let my parents down, right? They came to America, they busted their ass, to make it so that I don't have to struggle like them. And so they thought stability and making a decent amount of money was going to be that, but I was going to throw that away to become a stand-up comic. So I was afraid. But the reason why I quit was one day when I was at work, a famous comedian named Bobby Lee calls me and he goes, Danny, I need someone fat and weird looking on set tomorrow. And I was like, hey man, when do you need me on set? I'll be there right away, right? Because I'm gonna be on TV, man. So I took a day off the following day. I went on set, and Bobby, between takes, he was like, hey, you should quit your job, bro. You should do comedy full time. And I was like, you think I can make it? He goes, Danny, there's two types of people that get on TV. Really good-looking people and mutants. And you're a goddamn mutant, my friend. You know, you look like a human thumb. You look weird. It's like you're agile, but you have no definition. You know, you look like a potato. It's awesome, right? And I was like, and I didn't even get mad. I didn't even get mad at all. I was like, well, I mean, because Bobby also looks like a mutant, you know? He's like my mutant Sunbae. You understand what I'm saying? This is a jacked up X-Men. You know what I'm saying? Like, Bobby looks like a scallop. You know what I mean? He looks like a chumbok. But still, he makes money, and he says I can make money, right? And so he gave me the confidence. I quit my job, and that broke my parents' heart. You know, my mom was like, "야, 놈 새끼야, you throw away a 6-figure salary job to do this stand-up comedy? What the hell is stand-up comedy?" And I went, well, according to Wikipedia, stand-up comedy is, and she goes, what is the Wikipedia? I said, oh my God, this is gonna be a long, stressful conversation. Anyway, so I quit my job, and for about 10 years, I did what every non-famous, no-name comic does. We perform in all the hell gigs you can think of, right? So from college gigs you think are fun, but sometimes, think about it. I'm in a cafeteria at noon where people don't know that there's a comedy show going. And so people are like talking. There's a blender going on over there because somebody's making a smoothie in that side. And this is what you have to fight with. And then you get paid, and then you drive to the next college nearby, you know, and then that's what you have to do. I did that kind of gig. I did military gigs. I did gigs. I did a biker gang convention. You know, and on top of that, like I performed all over the world, but not in like theaters or comedy clubs. It was like dive bars. But this was fun. For the first 5 years, it was really fun. You know, sleeping in hostels, hotels, cars, trains, sleeping on friends' couches. You know, I once slept at a frat house, you know, to save money, right? So that was fun. And within my travels, I found out that they do stand-up comedy in English in all of Asia, right? Except Korea, right? So Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Japan, and there's a small scene in Korea. So 9 years ago, I came to Korea for the first time in my life, and I did a 5-city stand-up tour in English for expats and English teachers and other people that just don't know what to do with their lives. They were there, and so I was telling jokes for them, and it was a great time. I love Korea. Food was great. Got drunk. You know, women were pretty. It was awesome, right? And then one of my friends, he's one of my closest friends. His name's Big Phony. He's a singer-songwriter. Big Phony goes, "Hey man, wouldn't it be great if you can bring stand-up comedy to Korea and do it in Korean?" And I said, "Brother, we are way too drunk to have this conversation. Because number one, I can't speak Korean properly. And number two, the only things I know about Korean comedy at the time were, they weren't doing stand-up. They were doing like sketch comedy, like where people were like drawing boogers and like, you know, and then they're just falling on their face and they were like, oh, 대박, 웃겨, right? So to me, I was like, I don't understand that, right? And I don't think the culture would understand stand-up. That's what I believed, right? And so again, I'm touring, but that was planted in my head. It might be cool if I can do stand-up in Korean. And then so for 10 years again, I was just kind of doing the same thing over and over again. I was making money, I was making a living, but I wasn't happy. I was starting to get angry and bitter that my career wasn't taking off. I wasn't getting famous like Bobby said I would be, right? So instead of being bitter, what I did was, you know what? I should make a drastic change. So I decided to move to Asia, and I was thinking originally, hey, for about 2 years, move to Korea, on the weekends, travel, go to Singapore, Hong Kong, India, wherever, and do stand-up. And then on the weekdays, just, you know, do some random gig here and there, like English radio, whatever it is. That was my original plan. And so I get to Korea, and within the first month, boom, I did Guam, I did Saipan, I did Thailand, I was doing English gigs, I did gigs in English in Korea. And I was like, oh man, my plan's working. And I think I was happier. I was thinking about like new perspectives in life. And then one day, a friend of mine named June, he works at an entertainment company, and he goes, hey, Danny, there is a group of guys that do stand-up comedy in Korean, and they just started. You want to go check them out? And I said, what? What does that look like? So next week, I go with June to the show, and there was about 10 people in the audience, and they were terrible. They were awful. The group, basically, the laughter you hear from the 3 people you see in this auditorium right now was louder laughter than what you heard back then, right? And so I told them, yeah, you guys are, but here's the thing, they just started stand-up. You can't do an hour set and have a Netflix special within 3 times of going up, you know? And to them, their reference for stand-up was watching Netflix or YouTube with terrible subtitles. So things were being lost in translation. So they didn't really understand why that joke was funny, because they were at the mercy of whoever subtitled that project. And so I was like, hey man, Koreans have a word called konde, right? So I konde the hell out of these guys. I was like, hey man, the setup's too long. You know, I said, back in my days, I wouldn't set up like this, you know. And, you know, the punchline's weak, you know. And so the group, the 4 guys are called Comedy Alive. They looked at me and they were like, ane. But in their eyes, they were talking. You know when you talk behind someone's back or in front of their face, but you're talking through their teeth, you go, right, like, so that's what they were doing. Right. So what I did was I saw that and I said, okay, hey, next week I want to perform in Korean, and they're like, yeah, okay. And I think they were like, oh. Like, yo, let's see if you can do it. You probably suck too, fool, right? So the next week I go, and long story short, I had a great set. Actually, it was the same feeling I felt 20 years ago in that, where I was making fun of that woman. But this time I was actually doing stand-up comedy, and in the Korean language. And the vibe of the place was so great that it kind of altered my plans. I wanted to come here for about 2 years just to kind of get new perspective and get the hell out of here. But after that day, I decided, hey, I want to help this stand-up comedy scene. And so from that day on, I was helping mentor the Comedy Alive guys. You know, if they asked me, hey, Hyung, like, how do they do this? And I'd be like, I think you should probably hit that joke this way. And we started open mics, and 3 years have gone by, and within the 3 years, a lot of crazy things have happened, right? So within the 3 years, there's been 3 Korean language Netflix comedy specials that are out. There's about 35 comedians that have regular paid sets in Korea now. There's about 3 to 4 venues that do regular stand-up comedy. And KBS, they had one season of a show called Stand Up to showcase stand-up comedy on Korean national TV. And so I am fortunate that I could have helped all these projects, and I had a little hand in all of them, but I didn't do it alone. And what I wanted to say was, it was because of my connections in life that helped me accomplish all these things. Right, so for example, June, if it wasn't for June to take me to that crappy dive bar in Hongdae to see the Comedy Alive guys for the first time, I wouldn't be here, right? Without the Comedy Alive team trusting in me, believing in me, and making me like kind of their coach, right? I wouldn't be here, right? Without Bobby Lee saying, hey, you're a human thumb, stupid, you should quit your job and do stand-up comedy, I definitely wouldn't be here, right? And so what I want to tell all you guys listening is be nice to everybody you meet, because you never know who's going to help change your life, who's going to help your life. And yeah, that's how connections work. So thank you for your time. And I want to leave by saying, Oma, I'm still not famous, but I'm doing okay. Thank you very much.
COVID-19, is it threatening our cities? As you're staying at home, canceling all your social gatherings and your summer vacation plans, what are your thoughts on how this crisis is changing our cities? High density and connectivity are what make our cities exciting places to live. Yet they also make virus to spread very rapidly. We're seeing our big and globally connected cities become a hotbed of COVID-19. We are also continuously reminded to avoid going to crowded places and to minimize human contact. So we're basically told to stop living an urban life. The technologies available today also seem to indicate that we can now live and work online. Well, back in the late 1980s, scholars had actually predicted the death of cities with the advent of ICT. Today, cities are where more than half of the world's populations live, and they generate more than 80% of global GDP. Technology is not replacing cities, and one of the main reasons is because face-to-face interaction is important. We're seeing a rising trend of remote working during this pandemic. But this is likely made possible because people have already built the personal relationships and learned the tacit knowledge working offline so far. You might say, well, it seems like I can get everything ordered online these days, even the groceries and meals, and get them delivered to my door. Well, but think about it. This whole delivery system works because we live in close proximity to one another, making deliveries a profitable business. The benefit of concentrating people and economic activities is way too great. And the deadly diseases that have wiped out cities before, such as the Black Death of the 14th century, and the Spanish flu in the early 20th century, which, by the way, infected the 1/3 of world's population, did not deter the growth of cities at all. Cities are very resilient, and they will not be disappearing anytime soon. Yet, changes can take place. If history teaches us anything, it is that pandemics come and go, but cities persist and can even advance with the lessons learned from the pandemic experience. For example, a yellow fever outbreak in Philadelphia in 1793 led to the development of municipal waterworks. It also allows cities to see the importance of public sanitation, and throughout the following years, cities in the US carried out major planning reforms and established their sanitation departments. During the cholera outbreaks in the 19th century, London realized that the disease was caused by the contaminated water in the city, leading to the development of modern sewer system. In New York, its iconic Central Park was built to act as urban lungs and to help supply clean water throughout the city with its big reservoirs. In Paris, the epidemics triggered to the city's massive renovation and public works, and its chaotic and cramped slum streets were replaced with wide boulevards, open public squares, and of course, a new sewer system. The epidemics in the 19th century taught cities to transform themselves into a modern city with new urban infrastructure developments and much improved public sanitation. Then, what can our cities today learn from the coronavirus pandemic? I'm sure there are many interesting ideas out there, but I would like to share with you the following 3 points. The first point is that the COVID-19 is exposing the urban inequality as the major problem that needs to be solved by cities today. COVID-19 is actually thriving in unequal societies that have people living in subpar conditions. For example, imagine that you're living in an urban slum. With limited access to clean water, the most basic prevention of washing your hands as frequently as possible can seem like a luxury that you cannot afford, right? Also, practicing social distancing seems almost impossible when you're living in these cramped spaces, sharing a room with others, often the entire family. Toilets are highly insufficient, and one toilet could be shared by as many as hundreds, and if not thousands, of slum dwellers. We just imagine briefly what it might be like to face this COVID-19 for 1 billion people out there living in slums today. For those of you from more advanced countries, I'm sure you're witnessing how COVID-19 is exposing some of the entrenched urban inequalities in your society. In the case of Singapore, the city was once hailed as the gold standard in managing its COVID-19. Its situation quickly turned sour when virus outbreaks started to take place in overcrowded dormitories of foreign workers. Tucked away and hidden from this beautiful urban landscape of Singapore, the congested living quarters of temporary foreign migrant workers became the city's epicenter of coronavirus. In Seoul, its major outbreak in a call center revealed the cramped working spaces without windows and other precarious working conditions driven by the cutthroat competition among the subcontracting call centers. And of course, in the US, its racial inequity is being highlighted, with much higher number of Latinos and Blacks catching the virus than the whites. Who can afford to work from home using conference calls? Who has to take crowded transport and go to the crowded workplace? Whose jobs are being lost because of this COVID-19? And who has a better chance of coming back once the pandemic is over? Automation is nothing new for sure. Yet COVID-19 is speeding up this process, replacing many of the jobs especially those in lower skilled manufacturing and service sectors. Without dedicated policy measures, inequality is expected to worsen significantly. If the 19th century epidemics have revealed unsanitary urban environment as a problem to be addressed, I say that the coronavirus pandemic is trying to teach us that the cities have to get together and solve this urban inequality problem. As the cities in the past have come up with then innovative planning solutions to become a modern city, I hope that the cities today can find creative and workable policy solutions to become more equitable and inclusive city. My second point is that the cities are learning to connect with each other with compassion and solidarity during the COVID-19. So this kind of resonates with what Dean mentioned earlier this morning as well. I want to especially share this story. When Daegu was hit hard by the COVID-19 in early March, it was struggling to find enough hospital beds to hospitalize its increasing number of patients. Gwangju was the very first city that voluntarily offered to bring and treat patients from Daegu. The city of Daegu remembered this kindness and reciprocated in early July, when Gwangju began to now face the sudden increase of its COVID-19 cases. I find this story particularly heartwarming because the two cities represent the two regions in South Korea that have been politically somewhat conflicting for decades. The city-to-city support extends beyond borders as well. In early February, before its own outbreak, Daegu has sent face masks to Wuhan. And in March, Wuhan and a few other Chinese cities sent face masks and other protective medical equipment to Daegu, showing their support. Cities are also connecting in a more formal network. The Metropolitan Government of Seoul launched a global summit called Cities Against COVID-19. To build a platform of collaboration and solidarity, it brought together mayors and experts online, of course, to share the COVID-19 response strategies. C40 Cities, which is a global network of megacities to fight climate change, also convened mayors from all around the world to discuss the ways to fight this COVID-19 and to share the lessons learned so far. It seems like while deglobalization is going on, or the talk about deglobalization is going on, the cities are ever more strengthening their international ties and trying to collaborate to fight this crisis together. COVID-19, of course, brought out the worst in us in some ways. People fought over toilet papers, racial attacks have been increasing in a number of cities, and plenty of blames and accusations were being made. Yet, it is also bringing out the good in us. We're seeing the rise of compassion, mutual support, and collaboration. Cities are especially showing us that they're capable of building solidarity, moving beyond political differences, historical animosities, and even ideological tensions. I hope this trend can carry forward, with cities realizing the power of cooperation over competition. If cities can come together, build strong urban network, both domestically and globally, I think we'll have a better chance of building a better future in our new urban world. So, as I was saying, the last point that I want to end with is that COVID-19 can teach us stop and rethink and take actions to make changes, right? So in today's globalization, cities have been considered as the main economic engines of growth. And their development has been much driven by the global capital investments, right? And cities themselves have been in a competitive race to build the tallest skyscrapers and iconic mega projects to catch the global attention and to basically fulfill and meet the interests of the global capital. But COVID-19 is abruptly putting on hold this fast and massive development in cities. Those of us who are used to the busy and hectic urban lifestyles are also forced to slow down. It's very happy days for puppies, actually. As we look for grocery shops within walking distance and search for nearby parks to take a stroll, see the clear blue skies in one of the heavily polluted cities, we're beginning to question whether cities can and should be different. There is now an increasing interest in smaller scale planning of urban communities that could allow for more local lifestyle even in big cities. City leaders are seeking to encourage more cycling and walking and to provide greater access to green pathways. And the 15-minute city launched by the mayor of Paris is getting much attention. The basic idea is to build self-sufficient neighborhoods where you can find everything you need within just 15 minutes of walking or cycling from your home. Crisis can be an opportunity that pushes us to be more creative, make difficult decisions, and to take necessary actions for change. If we take a positive spin on this, the COVID-19 could be the much-needed impetus for cities to finally and fully commit to the Sustainable Development Goals and to respond to the climate change. It is an emergency brake that makes cities to pause and regroup and to take full charge of their future development path. How our cities will change after COVID-19 will depend on what we decide to do now and whether or not we fully commit to concrete actions. It is our responsibility to connect and work together to leave a meaningful legacy. When our future generations look back at how our cities changed after COVID-19, what will they say? What do you want them to say? Thank you.
I'm Hyuncheol and have worked at LA's, a biggest public corporation in South Korea, and it's been 17 years since I started to work. And I'm married and a father of 2 children who are 13 and 11 years old. And before I start, I just wonder, is there anyone who has children? Being good parents is not easy, right? Not from your point of view, but from your children's. It's going to be hard to answer. I like this title, I'm a Dad. I think it's easy to be a biological father. However, to be a real dad, we need to have a strong sense of responsibility for our kids. I'm going to tell a story about my special experience. 7 years ago, 2013, I took a year off from work and took a parental leave for 1 year. A dad taking parental leave is common and natural nowadays. However, at that time, it was a very unusual thing for fathers in Korean society. So when I first told people, I'm going to take a parental leave for my kids for 1 year, no one believed me. Why? Because they never heard of it before. So my boss, my colleagues, my friends, even my wife told me to stay at work because the next year, I was supposed to be promoted. Frankly speaking, I was very worried. I was worried that falling behind in my company, falling behind my juniors made me scared. But you know, time flies so fast and children grow up so quickly. I didn't want to miss the beautiful moment in time. So I ended up taking parental leave for 1 year when my 2 sons were 6 and 4 years old. The left is my elder son, Taemin-oh, and right is my younger son, Sungmin-oh. So my special experiences started like that on January 1st, 2013. What about my promotion? 2 years later, I made it. And my wife also took a parental leave for 1 year in 2012, and she returned to work next year. So I was at home alone with my kids. How about doing all the housework alone suddenly? Was I scared? No, I wasn't scared because I was good at cooking and cleaning. So at first, I was so happy not to go to work, and I didn't have to be stressed out from my work anymore. And being with my kids all day long was great. That was what I wanted to do. So I walked 2 kids up every morning and had breakfast together and take them to kindergarten by 9 o'clock like this. And then while they were kindergarten, I washed the dishes and cleaned the house and prepared some light meal and brought them back home and ate dinner after playing together. And then I washed the dishes again and cleaned the house again and again. For the first 2 months, it was good. I enjoyed this daily routine, but later on, I was getting tired. You know, I'm a very active and outgoing person, so my favorite things are outdoor activities such as driving, playing airsoft gun game, and going camping, swimming, climb the mountains. Sometimes I enjoyed practicing martial arts like taekwondo and kickboxing. But I was not able to enjoy these outdoor activities at all because of my kids. Also, it was winter and it was cold outside, so I was worried that my 2 sons might catch a cold. So we used to play at home. Because of that, I began to feel like I was suffering from depression, like postpartum depression. Has anyone ever experienced postpartum depression? I guess almost all of the fathers will never ever understand the feeling. It was horrible, and my self-esteem was getting lower and lower. And it had a negative impact on my children's emotional development because everything was annoying and it was hard for me to control my emotion. So I guess around at the end of February, I asked myself, what am I doing? Why did I take a parental leave? For living like this? No, this is absolutely not what I want to do with my kids for 1 year. So I came up with something and I began to make a difference. Even though it was cold outside, I started playing outside with my kids, and when the weather was warm and nice, I traveled and visited many places with my kids instead of taking them to kindergarten. We spent our time in forest, arboretum, museums, galleries, exhibition, theme parks, amusement park, national park, and cafe for kids, and camping site, almost everywhere. my two sons picked some pine cones from pine trees and gathered some branches and built a small house. It looks like a small tent, and kept those pine cones from there. Sometimes we played the hide and seek in forest, and sometimes we enjoy playing soccer in the playground, and made a paper airplane and flew like this. And at the camping site, we gathered branches and built a bonfire and grilled meat and sausage there. That was my favorite, and my two sons loved it too. We had a really good time, and we visited many places. So one day, I just wondered whether they remembered these trips or not. So I asked them, then their answer surprised me. Guess what they said? Dad, I can remember everything we did and everywhere we visit. Oh, my son, thank you for remembering. No, it didn't happen. Both of them remember nothing. This is absolutely what they say. Dad, how can I remember that? I was just 4 and 6 years old. So I was very disappointed, just a little, but it doesn't matter. I don't care, because my children and I have received already such a great gift, and I strongly believe that there are beautiful memories and feelings in their subconscious mind, and we got strong bonds between us. So if I choose two things I've done well in my life, the first thing would be this parental leave, and the second thing would be going to Canada for studying English when I was in university. Because of that, I'm sharing my beautiful memories with you today. In fact, Korean society is quite conservative. Some of you are from other countries. I guess maybe your country is similar. Traditionally, the role of male as a father and husband has been limited and passive. So father's responsibility was just to be a breadwinner, and the parenting and doing housework and education for kids were mother's responsibility. It was a matter of course. It was natural in the past. And it has been long since fathers started actively participating in parenting and education in Korean society. In my case, I learned a lot from this parental leave. I'm going to tell you two things today. The first thing is that parental leave is surely necessary for fathers. You know what? What mother can give to children and what father can give to children are totally different. Also, we can have some time to focus on our kids. Secondary, however, the parental leave itself doesn't solve everything. As I found out, it requires a lot of father's efforts. For making strong bonds and connection between children and father, the efforts must be made to father, not his children. The most important thing is the quality of the time. For example, if children watch TV alone and father sleeps on the couch, then they are simply sharing the same space, nothing more. It doesn't mean that watching TV is bad, but I'd like to advise you to do more hands-on activities with your kids. For example, you could draw a picture with your kids. Sometimes you can cook with your kids, and when you clean the house, do it together. And when you want to take a nap, just do it with your kids. And even your kids drinking some orange juice, drink some it together. Your children will love it. And what they learned from these activities and experiences will be true education. And also, it will have great influence to your children's personality and character. And they will feel loved and comfortable and secure. In my case, when I raised two energetic boys, the best physical activities were going camping and playing soccer. Of course, it depends on your children's personality, but my two sons loved it, those two things the most. So as they're running, kicking the soccer ball and sweating, they exhausted their energy, so they were hungry. They ate very well, and then they slept very well in the evening. All these processes began to be the virtuous cycle, and consequently, they became healthier and healthier. We take a trip with other family members. There are 4 fathers and 7 children. These 11 members travel every 2 months with our mothers. Mothers are free from the parenting, cooking, doing housework, and our kids learn more. They learn how to make a friend, how to play together, how to share their toys and foods. And this is kind of a group activity. And the forefathers, including me, went to same elementary school almost 30 years ago, and we were same class in 6th grade. The 4 boys grew up, got married, and became father, and met again, and traveled together with their kids. I think it's very special. It's not normal thing. I always appreciate it, and I think I'm very lucky to have such a great friend. Here is my picture. Well, campfire is our favorite, and the picture middle was taken in the Sarang Mountain. The right side, this picture was taken in 1989 when we were in 6th grade. And there is one last thing I'd like to tell you. Do exercise and be strong physically. Childcare needs our physical strengths. The stronger you are, the more you can do with your kids. It's like vehicles fuel efficiency. The diesel cars can go further than gasoline cars. It means that if you're stronger than now, you can do more things with your kids, with your family. It's good for you, it's good for your kids, and it's good for your family. If I mentioned it before, I like this title. To be a real dad, we need to have a strong sense of our responsibility for our kids. I've never read a book about children's education, and I'm not an expert. I'm still learning from my kids. However, I experienced all of these things by myself, and it's really true that if you spend your time and energy with your kids, then you will see your kids are changed. So today, I hope my special experience inspire fathers in many countries in the world. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Today, I'm going to be talking about cultural synergies and the opportunities that they present. As I was introduced, I'm Sam Okyere. I'm an actor, entertainer, philanthropist, all of that. But I think the one I love the most is being everybody's friend. I think that is that one accolade that I really love. And it is my job, and I thoroughly enjoy it, to put smiles on the faces of people on TV and everywhere I go. So within this presentation, or even towards the end, if you crack a little smile, it means I've done my job well. But if you don't, it means I failed at my job. So I beg you, please, if you find something that's remotely funny, crack a smile. All right, I want to take it back. 16 years ago, I remember I was part of the cadet corps, a school, very small group of guys and girls who trained military style. And we had a very, very famous comedian come talk to us. He's called Kweku Sintimbisa. I'm sure my Ghanians know of him. Or we affectionately call him KSM. He came to give us a pep talk at school, and he said a lot of things. And out of everything that he said, the one thing that struck me the most was the word perseverance. Now, as a 14-year-old, that was the first time I heard that word. It was a big word to me. I was like, wow, that's a huge word. But he explained further. And he spoke about the importance of having passion for your goals and your dreams, and never giving up no matter what came your way. Now, to be frank and honest, I didn't really understand what he said, because as a 14-year-old, I hadn't really faced any real challenges at that time. But 5 years on, this word perseverance would be my guiding motto as I set on this journey to Korea. Very uncertain journey to have my bachelor's in computer science and engineering. Some people get shocked when they hear it. 진짜? A lot of Koreans, they get shocked. They can't believe it. Like, oh, you study computers, but you're on TV. And I tell them, well, life doesn't always go the way you plan it. Life is pretty funny. But I'm still glad where I ended up. So it was through the government scholarship program that I came to Korea. And the reason why I say it's an uncertain journey was because it was riddled with a lot of what ifs and a lot of questions. And I'm sure every foreigner in this room, at least at one point in time before you came to Korea, you probably asked yourself a whole bunch of questions. What kind of food do they eat there? What language do they speak? What is the culture? How are people going to perceive me? Are people going to accept me for who I am? These are legitimate questions that you ask yourself. And sometimes when you come here, you still find yourself asking these questions because sometimes you never even get over that cultural shock. So these are questions that I ask myself. But at the end of the day, I was determined to ride the tide and persevere no matter what. I don't know about you guys, but coming from where I'm coming from, you can't leave and come back the same. You have to succeed at whatever it is that you do. And I was determined to do exactly that. And living in Korea, when I first came, there weren't too many foreigners. Korea is a homogeneous society. It wasn't very easy. You had to go to very specific places to meet foreigners. And as an African, as a person of color, it meant that I had to go the extra mile. It was almost as if you had to prove yourself to people everywhere that you went. And that was the same for me even going into the entertainment industry. It was something that I carefully planned and calculated to do. Because every time I spoke to my Korean friends, I'd often ask them, what makes you so afraid of me? Why do you think I live in a hut somewhere, that I run with lions and elephants? I told them, I had to go to the zoo to see a lion. I've never seen a lion in my entire life. So I asked them, what informed your ideas of me? All these prejudices. And they say, well, the truth is that we don't have any real contact with people from where you're from, so we watch TV, and this is what TV informs us. It's like, TV is a very important tool. I'm going to plunge into that. Now, speaking of TV, takes me way back when I was really, really young. Now, I remember my grandfather, a very, very important person to me in my life. He's taught me so many things. When we wanted to watch cartoons, my grandfather never agreed. He always wanted us to watch cultural-eccentric programs or culture-centered programs like Oktoberfest in Germany or sumo wrestling in Japan or traditional festivals in China. And the truth is that being that young, I didn't really see the importance of that. I just wanted to watch cartoons and just have fun. But every time we did that, my grandfather would come and reward us with cookies and give us delicious orange juices, like, yeah, you're doing a good job. Little did we know that subconsciously it was helping us to be more open-minded and to understand that there are very different cultures besides those that we know. Now, down the line, here I am, working in the entertainment industry. My main job is to connect two cultures, and I do not take that for granted at all, honestly. I think it's a great recognition, and that is some of the things that you enjoy from cultural synergy, to be able to connect these two cultures and opportunities that come with it. Now, when David, the comedian, he was talking about his mom being proud, it was the same thing. Now, when you type on your phone, the most famous black man in Korea, my face pops up. And my mom would intentionally go to her friends and say, do you know Korea? Not really. She shows them where Korea is. Do you know who the most famous black man in Korea is? They say, no, my son. And she shows them a picture of me. She's very, very proud. And it makes me proud as well. And these little things, they really come to tell me that, the job is going well, but there's still a lot of things to do. And within the course of living here, of course, so many experiences, but of course, so many ideas that have shaped me to be who I am. And I'm going to share these ideas with you, structured in the number 572. If you're not familiar with what it is, I'll break it down. So 572 is basically my name numeralized in Korean. 5 is for O, 7 is for Chil, and 2 is for E. O-Chil-E. That's my name, 572. Yeah, Koreans like, oh my God. It's so interesting when you talk about connecting cultures, right? Because when you look at Ghana and Korea on the map, so far apart. So you travel a lot of kilometers to come to Korea. You go to language school. You open your book. You're learning Korean. The first thing you see is Ghana. You're like, what? I came all the way from Ghana to Korea and I'm seeing Ghana. It's like everything is connected. Everything is connected. And then my name. If I want to put Sam, that's 3. So 3572, Sam Okyere. And those are the last 4 digits of my phone number. I did that on purpose. So I want to break these ideas down. Now, the number 5. The 5 represents the 5 things that I believe in. The first and foremost is believing in yourself. I believe it's the one thing that nobody can do for you. Who you are is what makes you unique. I believe that a lot of people have accepted me. They like me because I'm true to who I am. I don't pretend to be somebody else. And believing in yourself provides you an opportunity to tell people about where you're from, your culture, and to share things with them. So it's so important to believe in yourself no matter where you go. It's the one thing that nobody can take away from you. The second thing is respecting cultures and ideas. It's important that sometimes when we come to Korea, we often find ourselves projecting things that we know from our cultures and always complaining about Korea over and over again. But we need to respect different cultures. The third thing is that you cannot fight ignorance with ignorance. You have to fight it through dialogue. It's why when somebody comes at you and you talk to them, they get shocked. And it provides you an opportunity to have a conversation. The fourth one is don't be afraid to not know. A lot of people want to pride themselves in the fact that they know it all, but you cannot know it all. And in fact, when you tell yourself that you do not know it all, that's when you're able to learn and get new information. The last thing that I want to talk about is that you have to continue learning. Life is a non-stop learning process. Nobody gets it all. You have to keep learning and learning. Number 7 talks about the days of the week, Monday through to Sunday. I believe that every day is a new opportunity to meet new people, to get a lot of inspiration, to get new ideas. So make every day count. 2 represents morning and evening, my most important times of the day. Have you guys taken the subway really early in the morning? I have, and not one single soul was smiling because people don't want to go to work. They just want to be in bed and sleep. But how you wake up in the morning really sets the tone for how your day is going to go. If you get up and you're happy and you're positive, when you meet people, you say hi, you greet them, you extend that positivity that comes out of you. In the evening is when I just recount and assess everything that I did in the day, mistakes learned, and it catapults me to make better decisions moving forward. Now, there are a few things that I want you guys to take away from today. The first thing is language. Nelson Mandela once said that if you talk to a man in a language he understands, it goes to his head. But if you talk to a man in his own language, it goes to his heart. Hence, when you meet Koreans and they say, 안녕하세요, they get so excited. Oh, 한국말 진짜 잘하네요. Oh, and all you said was one word. That's how powerful of a tool language is. It's that one thing that when you learn, you never lose it. It's a great skill and it brings you endless possibilities. So if you're in Korea, even if you're here for 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, 1 year, I really encourage you to learn the language. It's going to open a whole lot of doors for you that you never knew existed. I would not be here if I didn't speak the language and learn the culture. So please, language, very, very important. The second thing, of course, diversity. I believe that what culture does for us is that it allows us to embrace other cultures and not lose our identities. You want to be able to learn about new cultures but not forget who you are and where you came from. It's also about defining our differences, looking for similarities, and above everything else, coming together as a group. I think is so important. And personally, some of the best moments for me have been being a cultural ambassador for different agencies here in Korea. I believe that there's unity in diversity, so we have to embrace that. Don't look at somebody's culture and say, well, this is different from mine, so it's bad. No, the fact that it's different does not mean it's bad. It's just different. Just learn it and move on. Now, impact. I believe that the result of cultural synergy eventually is to create a legacy and leave an impact in your community. Whatever platform you have, whatever opportunity you have, be it big or small, I believe that you can make a little impact. And it's for this reason that I partnered with World Vision to start the 572 School Foundation in Ghana 2 years ago. We just completed the second school, and I believe some of these things are very important in giving the community a sustainable way of creating new leaders for the new generation. Now, before I end my talk, I want you to ponder over some of these questions. Ask yourselves, what do you represent? What is your cultural identity? And rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. How intercultural you are. And when you ask yourself these questions and you answer them, you're going to find that everything is going to connect. Even all the speakers who have spoken before me, talking about how to be a dad. I want to be a great dad like you when I grow up someday and have fun with my kids and create beautiful memories. We often try to find the differences that put us apart, as opposed to the similarities that can keep us together. Once we search more for those things, we'll realize that we have more in common than we have in differences. And we realize that at the end of the day, whether you're from Ghana, you're from Korea, you're from Mongolia, wherever you are, you find out one single thing about you which is human and makes the other person human as well. Thank you guys so much for having me. Appreciate it.